Hi, welcome to our podcast today. My name is James Norton. I'm a wealth consultant at Simplify Consulting. We're here today to talk about the challenges of product switching within financial services, the issues and blockers faced by both customer and provider, how that impacts them, and what is influencing change to combat this and improve the overall service. It's a follow on from the blog we recently published, so if you haven't already, feel free to go and give that a read. With me, I've got Rich, one of our consultants here at Simplify, and Dom, who's one of our lead consultants. Both have worked directly in the transfer space for a long time, so seen pretty much everything it's got to offer. So, Dom, I'm going to come to you first. In your experience, what do you think are the main challenges faced by customers when looking to transfer or switch providers?
Yeah, thanks, James. Well, I think there's quite a lot of different challenges around, product switching and transfers in general. I think from a customer point of view in particular, I think the the customer journey is actually quite a challenge to decipher for many. I think if you start at that very beginning, it's if a customer has they're not happy with their current provider or they think they can get a better deal somewhere else. I think first of all, how do they best compare and identify where they want to transfer to, where the benefits are going to be for them? We obviously have an advice gap, which we've spoken about before. So there's a lot of customers that are self-service, and if you compare it to some other industries, such as switching your energy provider, the customer journey for transferring a wealth product is markedly different. It's very difficult to navigate and understand what's required of the customer, how long things are going to take, what do they need to do at each of the stages. A lot of it falls into a black hole, effectively, where we often hear when we work with our clients, how best do we keep our customers and also advisors up to date and with the progress of the transfer. There's obviously a lot of contact that comes in to say, can you let me know where my transfer is? When can I expect it to complete? The ability for a provider to make that customer journey as clear as possible and to give regular updates without being over the top and giving information that's just not necessary. There's quite a balancing act. I think there's it's always been a bit of a complex journey. We hear it all the time that it's where a lot of the resources are being spent from a back office point of view. It's where a lot of complaints come from in terms of transfers. So I think for anything that can be done to try and simplify the process, make it as clear as possible, is going to be of benefit to a customer. There are obviously greater complexities when it comes to transferring an ISO, or in particular transferring a pension, compared to those other industries. So, being aware of that complexity and keeping people up to date and recognizing that sometimes they do go on for a period of time, I think that's the best outcome that can be provided. I think as a whole, the wealth industry, particularly in transfers, does lag behind other industries in providing that good customer journey. I think there's definitely room for improvement.
I completely agree. Rich, have you got any thoughts on the matter?
To be honest, I think Don's put it pretty nicely, to be honest. So
Mm.
it really is. It's the time it takes currently to process a transfer and keeping the customer updated is difficult because quite often the providers don't, 100% know what's going on. Some of these some processes are still paper based almost, relying on sort of your post and so on. So even from a provider point of view, they put something in the post, they don't get an update for possibly a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks until that's arrived and so on. So it is um, it is a tricky one, but it definitely does need to change, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Your
I think
thoughts?
obviously there is a whole load of paper transfers that are still taking place. I think obviously the introduction of electronic transfers over the last kind of 10, 15 years has made a massive difference. So you can see kind of timescales coming down, the number of transfers that can be completed via the electronic journey has gone up. But I think the challenge is there hasn't been that much innovation recently. There's been tinkering with it, but it's still fundamentally the same journey. And if you compare it across other industries, and that's obviously where the customer perception of what's possible, how long things should take, I think customers are at a point, and kind of the technology innovation that we're seeing elsewhere is at a point where there's a real frustration that transfers just isn't at the same point in kind of its maturity, as it were.
Yeah, I think you've both touched on really valid points there. I think, Rich, you've obviously been in this remit at a large provider. You've seen it at consultant level. What do you think needs to change in that respect for providers? Where are the gaps? What can they do specifically, do you think, to change?
Yeah, it's a good question, and they definitely can change and make this better. So Dom mentioned sort of your electronic messaging there, and it's been around for a decade now, if not longer. And that's key, like that. Having providers talk to each other almost immediately makes this entire process a lot easier, a lot quicker. However, what we're seeing still is, albeit they've got that messaging service between providers, quite often we're seeing that isn't integrated into the provider's system. So albeit you're sending that message to say, yep, I have that stock, or yes, I have that cash, there's still someone sat there receiving that message manually, typing it into their admin system, which then will progress the next stage of the transfer. They get some more details and they go back to their messaging system and send a message reply to say they're ready to continue. So we have all the means to make this better. It's just we really need to get providers to integrate those messaging service into their admin platforms, and then you remove the person from that process. Things can happen within minutes, as opposed to potentially days, depending on workload, depending on staff levels. So that's sort of, for me, that's one of the key elements is that integration piece. The other piece is getting everyone on board onto the same way of doing things. As I said a moment ago, people are still doing paper-based transfers. Like, we're in 2023 and that's still an option. It doesn't need to be, and it shouldn't be. And whether that's for the regulator to come in and say, right, no, you need to actually get on board with some sort of a meshing system. Ideally, they would even force a certain type and structure to those messages. So regardless of what end solution you're using, the message can be read by anyone. And until that really happens, you're going to have providers that are paper-based, and you could have a really fancy platform that does everything automatically. But if you need to then write out to a different provider that doesn't have that messaging service capability, you have to resort to paper, which then again slows down the entire process, slows down everything for the customer, and just makes it really difficult. So yeah, it's really sort of just embracing the technology that we already have to make this better.
I think there does have to be some willing amongst providers as well. I think when you compare the transfers journey to some of the other journeys, particularly providers who have spent a lot and put a lot of effort into automating their systems, etc. Transfers is one of the areas where they do need more people to service a smaller number of cases than you would find in certain other teams like dealing or corporate actions or whatever else they have. I think it's difficult because that resource is a lot of the time justified because of the nature of the journey, and sometimes it's not in the best interests of providers to put a load of resource into transfers out, which is obviously where some of the barriers lie in terms of smoothing through that process of customers being able to transfer out. But if you look at, like you say, Rich, some of the regulations that are coming out now, consumer duty being the most obvious one, where you're saying, well, actually, no, it's not acceptable that you have a transfer in journey which is really smooth and really quick and can do it kind of with a few push of the button, but your transfer out journey takes weeks, and you put in barriers, and you have to send these forms out to be completed and get sent back, and all the rest of it. I think we've seen examples of where the transfer out journeys have not been given enough of the attention. And I think if you talk to a lot of people in the industry, that's the challenge, where they kind of say, well, our transfer in journey is great, we just have to wait and wait and wait on the actual journey to have taken place on the other side. And there is a little bit of the industry needs to come together, or be forced to implement some stuff that actually will benefit everyone if everyone works collectively towards the same end goal.
Yeah, completely agree. I think having people on that same wavelength is going to be crucial. And you make a good point around consumer duty, and I just want to stick on that point for a minute, because, like you say, providers have got the sort of potential opportunity to show what they can do in the market here, whether it's forced or not through consumer duty, you might argue, or not. But how do you think that'll shape up in the coming months?
Well, I think it's a direct challenge to some of those practices that have been embedded for quite a while now, in terms of saying your service levels have to be proportionate. You can't have your out journey that markedly different from your in journey. And I think it does force providers to actually look at this and say, is what we're doing acceptable from a customer point of view? So I think that's great. Obviously, there are some other initiatives. The STAR initiative is another one that's out there in the market, and more providers are signing up to that in terms of an agreed standard. So that's really great to see. I guess consumer duty is a good starting point, but it is principle based and open to a lot of interpretation. And I just wonder if the FCA are going to be serious about improving transfers, as the almost like the problem child of wealth operations, as it were. If transfers is going to markedly improve, I think some kind of more direct action is needed. We've seen certain things like the making transfers simpler piece that came in the last couple of years, to say it's not acceptable to sell down instead of just converting, where there's a different share class that's available. Looking at it from a customer point of view, and not being so inwardly focused, to say these are the practices that we've always had, this is what works for us, get the cash transferred even when that's not right for the customer. Some of these things have to change, and I think the timescales is a big one that needs some focus. We know that there needs to be some friction in this. We know that there needs to be, like things like preventing fraud from pension transfers, and that's right. But the concern is that providers look at that and go, right, well, that's another barrier to transferring out. So let's input that and go through that journey as much as possible. When actually, some of this is common sense. If you've got to transfer out to a well-known provider, it shouldn't be flashed for like red or amber, and needs extra steps. Friction is right in certain circumstances, but equally, the customer needs to be put right at the heart of this journey, and taken forward. I think, Rich, we were discussing, weren't we, in terms of blockchain, and whether that technology is going to be a bit of a game changer for transfers, in terms of being able to have a single source of truth, and being able to kind of put the customer almost at a self-service level, in terms of being able to move their assets around between providers. I don't know if I think that's going to be a really interesting thing that might come through in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really interesting. I think it's going to be really helpful, to be honest, across the industry, but specifically for transfers. If you have this one register, if you will, of ownership, transferring that to a different provider it becomes a 5-minute activity. There's no need to, you can basically do away with the process of customer going to new provider. Hi, I've got 10,000 stock. New provider writing to old customer to confirm it. Old provider to confirm it. Old provider coming back and saying, "Yep, we have that stock." That whole process is effectively eliminated. because we've got this one ledger, one register. Yep, that customer owns that stock. Done. Easy as that. I think it's really interesting tech, and it's definitely something we're going to see in the sort of the coming years. And it really help this journey to just speed up and be much better for the customer. It's once we have that level of technology and that level of integration with providers, there's nothing really stopping like a compare the market type comparisons taking place to have a look at your fees you're going to be charged, and all that sort of stuff can easily be integrated once you have that seamless transfer process.
Well, yeah, completely agree, Rich. I think ultimately the customer needs to be put at the heart of this. We've spoken a lot about the end user journey, and that is really where the change needs to come from to make sure that they're being serviced in the right way, especially in the advent of Consumer Duty. So that's going to be extremely interesting to see what providers do in that space. But thanks very much both for your time today. It's been really interesting to hear your thoughts on this. Again, if you haven't already seen our blog on this, please feel free to go give it a read, and you can find other content on our website as well. Thanks very much for your time, and thanks very much for listening.